Hey
guys, welcome to part 2 of how to draw cartoon faces. Today we're going to be talking about drawing face shapes. Sounds simple, but hopefully it's going to be a fun one for you. If you guys are just seeing this video for the first time, please check in the description below. You'll be able to find a link to the first video where we talk about how to draw cartoon faces and give you a bit of a recap first before coming into this one. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy this video and hopefully we get something out of this one. So I'm not going to waste your time too much. I realise that these videos do take a little bit longer than I thought they were going to be. I thought they were going to be like these quick 5-minute snippets, but as I explained them, I realised that they do generally sort of happen to go a little bit longer than I intended to. So anyway, let's move on forward. We're going to be talking about cartoon faces, most specifically face shapes. Okay, so last week we did some generic faces using circles and some very generic facial features. So eyes, nose, mouth, ears, hairline. I think we touched on the chin, but all the main features that create a face. At the end of it, I talked about that we were going to be doing different face shapes this week, and I did a few examples. So I'm going to use those examples as a beginning point, just to sort of reiterate what we were talking about. Now, when we go into the facial features, I'm going to keep them really, really simple. Again, just to remind you what we were doing as far as the... let me just get my brush sorted here. As far as what the facial features are going to be, we're going to use these consistently throughout this exercise. So we're going to do... That is the wrong brush. That's not the one I wanted to use. Okay, you'd think I'd be a bit more prepared for these. So as far as eyes, we're just going to do some very generic fish-shaped eyes. I say fish-shaped because if you just had a little tail to the end of them, they're like little fish. We're not going to add the tails, they're just going to be just that main shape there. The nose we're going to use is just this standard pointed nose. Now, as I'm going through these, you probably will have some questions about them. After this lesson, the next one, we are actually going to be talking more about facial features, and I'm going to break them down into different ones. So we're going to do eyes, nose, mouth, really break it up, really expand on each item, so you guys can really absorb it and spend a bit more time practicing them, hopefully. And as for the mouth, probably just going to do like a nice generic happy mouth, whether it's something like that, or like that. A bit of a lip there. Ears, I'm going to do my sort of generic C style ear, which is like that. And hair, if I remember correctly, we did a hairline which was very similar to that on the little face. There we go. There's the little guy. Okay, so we're just going to stick with these ones. If you guys are new to these videos and you want to draw along, keep it simple for yourself. Follow along, choose some simple features, and work on them on this exercise that we're going to do today. So, we've already talked about how we're going to arrange the face, and I'm keeping these ones really simple for you. I want to just have a standard cross point for where the features are going to sit, and I'm going to show you the placement again just as a reminder for you. Eyebrows is what I also forgot to talk about. There's nose, mouth, ears, hair, chin if we wanted to add a chin. Now I don't want to repeat myself too much here. This is the guy we were working on last week. So, taking those same examples, now what I want to talk about here as I go into this, and I'm just going to be drawing the same face while I go over this, is by creating different shapes, and you can use some very basic shapes. You can see here I've used 4 very main ones. I've got a circle, I've got a square, I have a triangle, and I have a hexagon. All of these shapes can be used to create the face, and each of them, as we discovered last week, will give us a variety of characters just by changing the shape here. Now, one thing that I'm not really focusing on is facial features, including, say, the jawline, the chin. Well, this guy's got a couple of wonky eyes. That's alright, doesn't matter too much. Just using it as an example. But we want to discover how just using different shapes are going to create these new characters. Now you'll see here that I've actually just sort of used this point as a guide. I'm not going to have a very pointy chin, but more of a rounded chin that comes down towards like a point. But as you can see, here we go. All of the same features, creating 4 different characters. Now this is pretty basic. You guys are probably going, well, hang on, we're talking about face shapes, and here he is just telling me how to use some basic stuff. I just wanted to get this down just to give you an example of what can be capable of using different shapes. In a second, I'm actually going to start expanding on this, and we're going to start creating our own shapes. Now I've got some examples here that I'm going to use, but these are just examples. You guys can create your own using many different shapes, and you don't have to use these generic shapes. You can create your own shapes. You know, if you want to use sort of a long circle, or even sort of like a sausage shape, just as a base example. This is what you're going to get. This is you just experimenting with basic shapes. Now let's move into something a little bit more in depth. Okay, now what I'm doing here is I'm actually adding shapes to shapes. So if you have a look here, and I've broken these down, I've changed the color of the additional shapes that I've used to give you guys a view of what it is that I've done. So the grey circles, well, the grey shapes, so I've got 3 grey circles and a grey square. They're my base shapes. What I wanted to do here is then add on to those shapes an additional shape. Now I've been very basic here, I've added basic shapes not to make things too complicated, so I can explain this to you just simply, but you can really go all out with this. You don't have to be as sort of generic or static as I've been. If you want to really go out of left field with where you want to place these shapes and how you're going to create these faces, go for it. And I'll do a couple of examples of what I mean by that in a second. And I'm only adding 2 shapes here. You guys can add multiple shapes, and I'll go through that as well. But let's have a look at what I've done, and I'm only probably going to add some facial features to a couple of these because I don't want to waste too much of your time. I really just want to talk about how you can create your own unique faces. So I'm going to drop the opacity on this just a little bit, and I'm going to draw over these so you can actually see the shapes that I have created here, that, you know, without all these draw-throughs. So what I've done in this one is I've done just a circle with a square added to the bottom of it. Looking at this already, the first thing I see is a very strong-jawed character, someone like a bodybuilder, for example, or just a strong man, or a sumo wrestler, or maybe a bodyguard, or maybe a hitman. You know, just trying to think of some real generic stereotypes that would fit this shape. Let's have a look at this one here. This one I've just inverted. I've flipped. So instead of having the square at the bottom, I've got the square at the top. Just adding a little cross section there. Okay, now we've got complete other character. This would be perfect for maybe like a young teenager. It's got like a nice, really high forehead here. Someone who's quite nerdy, I think, could work for that. Or even like, I can imagine maybe like a little mob boss or something like that. Reminds me of like a Disney character. The name is slipping me at the moment, but if I remember it, I'll let you know. Let's have a look at some of the other ones here. Alright, so now I've gone a little bit more abstract with the way that I've added these shapes. So rather than just making the shape sort of uniform to the original shape, I've added smaller shapes to one of the shapes, and I've also sort of jutted one of the shapes outwards. So here we've got the nice square, and then we're going to create this weird sort of jawline. Already looking at this one, this will be great for a skeleton. So you could do skeleton's teeth with his eyes and nose. Very basic, but that was sort of the first thing that came to mind. Otherwise, you could use someone with really strong cheekbones, like that. He's a bit of a sinister character. Ears off to the side here. Now, one thing I want to talk about as well while I'm doing this, and before I jump over to here, you can see that my cross section sits up quite high like that. So as we explained last week with facial features and placement, the ears would sit here. Now if we wanted to have a good play around with it, we could actually put it down here and have the ears down here along with the eyes, the nose and the mouth, and have this guy having a big afro or something, you know. Or we can go the complete opposite way. We can put it up here. We can draw a nice big nose and a tiny mouth. We've got this sort of gentle elderly looking guy and a couple of bags under his eyes. So we've taken this one shape that we've created using multiple shapes, and just by even changing the placement of where that cross section is, where the eyes sit, I've created 3 different characters using that one shape. It's all about the placement and just playing around and experimenting and seeing what you can really do with it. Okay, now we're going to have a look at this one. This one, I just wanted to do sort of like a figure 8 shape, like this. So we're going to use this cross section here. So a couple of eyes here, a nose, a mouth, and some hair. Ears sit there. Alright, so you've sort of got, I'm imagining like this real chubby faced businessman. I'm going to just go back a couple of steps here. I'm actually going to bring the eyes up here, just to, you know, elaborate a little bit more on what we talked about here. I want to bring the nose down here. Ears can sit up here. You know what, even, I'm just playing around here. I hope you guys are actually watching sort of what I'm doing. This guy's just got like a really bulbous chin. Absolutely ridiculous. But we're taking all of those elements from this face, rearranging them in different ways, in different placements, on different face shapes, and we're coming up with some really unique character designs now. Hopefully you guys are you know, starting to understand this, and hopefully you're drawing along, or you're going to be doing some drawing after this and playing around with your own shapes to understand that a little bit better. The more you do it yourself on paper, the more you'll start to discover, the more you'll start to experiment. Just watching these videos and going, oh, okay, I get it, isn't going to be enough. You really need to put these pencils to your page or your stylus to your tablet and go for it. Alright, so this is the last part of this lesson. What I've done here is almost the opposite of this page here. We're actually subtracting elements from main shapes. Pardon me. So, what I'm doing is, let me just get my page set up here. I just want to make sure that I don't mess things up. Alright. Just drop the opacity on that one so you can see what I'm doing. Alright, so originally this here was a large circle, just a standard circle. What I've done instead is I've actually cut another circle out of the side of it to create this nice crescent shape. Now this would actually be really good as a side-on view, but what I've done for the purpose of just trying to keep it simple for you all is just done a standard cross section. And we're just going to have this moon crescent faced guy Much like one of the old McDonald's characters. I wish I could remember his name, I really do. But now I'm creating a really unique character just by using a really interesting shape. You put all those facial features in the right place, you can create a really fun character. Someone with, he looks quite charismatic, a lot of fun. He could be really interesting to add into a universe that's, just a bit more fantasy or a bit more cartoony. Alright, so let's have a play with this one. So again, I've taken what was originally a square, and I've just cut a couple of rectangles out of the side of it. This is actually quite similar to this bottom shape here in the way that I've done it. This is just to show you that there's multiple ways that you can create shapes. You don't just have to add things, but you can subtract things. So again, let's add some facial features in there. This actually reminds me of one of the characters from Hey Arnold, if any of you have watched it. He had that goofy little hairdo at the top there. And if you see what I'm doing here as well, I'm using these shapes as a guide sometimes. I'm not even making them hard-edged for the character, I'm just sort of softening them out or rounding them off. And you can experiment that when you are doing the actual facial shapes, and I'll show you what I mean. So now that we've actually cut this section away, we can even add a nice circular shape here. Cut this section off, cut this section off, cut this off, cut this off. We've created a nice little shape, and that actually works quite nicely. Throw the ears up here, boom, face. This one was a very simple one, was originally a circle. Again, cut 2 rectangles off the side, just to create a nice slender character like this. And this one here I experimented a little bit more. This one was actually originally a square, and I've cut 3 sections off of this one. So this is what it originally looked like. I've added a circle here to round off the top, and then I've just cut off 2 circles down here, more oval shaped circles, and I've created this really cool, very similar to the skull shape that I did earlier down there, but a bit more rounded off to make it a bit more sinister looking. I think when I was putting this one together, it kind of reminded me of General Grievous. There we go. A bit of an evil character. Okay. So that's pretty much it. That's just the basics that I wanted to talk to you about of creating face shapes. So you can go from really nice, simple shapes that can create still very interesting characters to now adding shapes together or subtracting shapes from other shapes to create something quite unique. Now, I want to do just one more thing while I'm here. Talking about shapes. So let's take this nice circle here. And what I want to do is add a square here. What I'm then going to do is I'm actually going to add a little triangle here. And then I'm actually going to add another rectangle here. This just looks like a big mess of shapes. It really does. But once we actually start to sculpt that, we can start to see one big flat shape starting to form here. And what we can do is we can then put in our little cross section and draw a face out of it. It's nothing fantastic, but it gives you an idea of what you can do. You don't have to just be stuck into just adding 1 or 2 shapes. You can start to add shapes. You can then start to cut away from it, cut little shapes out, give them like a different style chin. Maybe you want to really protrude those eyebrows, so you can add in those diamond shapes to create some eyebrows. just have a play, add shapes, tinker around, put some really exciting stuff together, and you'll come up with some really interesting faces. And you'll start to see this rule come into play as well when you're coming into drawing bodies. And we'll get to that much later on. Whilst we're focusing on the face shapes, have a bit of fun. Try this out. Hopefully it helps you guys. Now, before I go, I just want to let you all know that I am going to be putting these reference sheets up on my website. So you'll find a link down below. You can download a reference sheet for this on my website. It's just a free PDF that you can download, and also I'll be cataloging all the videos on there as well. I am going to go back and create a reference sheet for the first little lesson that I did, and for every subsequent episode that I do after this. So please be sure to check that out. Download those for your own use. They are 100% free. Share them around, let everyone know, and hopefully you guys get something out of it. Hopefully you'll start to learn and develop. You can print them out as many times as you want. You can draw over them as much as you want. They're just going to be a really helpful resource to you all, and hopefully it'll push you into really broadening your imagination and what you're capable of. Alright, I'm going to leave you alone. Thank you all for watching. I hope you got something out of this. I say that all the time, but I really, really do mean it. Be sure to download those reference packs and check out the website overall. There's some cool stuff on there. If you want to check out some of the comics or anything that I've made, you can purchase them on there as well. Otherwise, if you liked this video, please hit that like button down below. Subscribe to this channel for weekly videos. I'll be doing these every Tuesday. And don't forget to say hello and leave something down in the comments so I can hear from you. I love hearing from you guys, and I'll be getting to you all very, very shortly. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next week.